What's up, y'all? LTJ Regis here. This is Throwing Light. And if you're not throwing light, you're not acting right. I'm super excited about this episode we're about to do before we get started. Remember, I don't know why. I've been alive for a minute, and so is YouTube, but somehow I'm just now getting into it. So I need you guys to start subscribing to YouTube, where you can see all the Throwing Light interviews. You can see the Throwing Light tour I've initiated, and you can see things about Louisiana words and something that we haven't talked about in a long time, which we are going to talk about later on this episode, which is a nonprofit for writers in Louisiana that are of the LGBTQI plus community that are, looking for a way to, express themselves, especially during these times. With that being said, let's go ahead and kick over to our guest. We have J. Michael Norris, who is a personal friend of mine. This is an actual friend, a real friend on the show. Somebody that for almost 4 years now, we have, been partners in crime. It's been really exciting. I'm glad to have him on the Throwing Light platform, where there's a lot of people to reach, and we can talk about all the fun things that my talented, handsome friend J. Michael Norris does. Michael, how
Well,
are you doing?
I'm doing good. How have you been? It's been a
Um,
little bit.
well, we have to have all the real catch up later because but in terms of what I've been up to since our last interview is just, trying to keep the light going. I know Louisiana is um suspicious right now. There's some suspicion going on. How is Louisiana going?
Louisiana's, it's going. We just had our elections canceled by the governor
That's
because they
exciting.
want to redistrict our state elections to make sure that, according to them, we have more neutral elections, but it's really just to, sort of ungerrymander and gerrymander in the other direction. So we have mostly Republican representative at the national level. So, that's been fun to have to watch.
We also
Um,
call that cheating. So,
yeah, I mean, it's
basically.
one of those things where some people had already started their mail-in ballots. So canceling an election at that point seems a little I don't know, just not the way you're supposed to be doing things. So, well, there's lawsuits going on. We'll see what ends up happening. But so that's sort of the political climate here right now. That's what we live under. If we had more people going out and voting, that wouldn't be what would be happening. And so that's one of the biggest problems in Louisiana is that we actually have more Democrats registered to vote in the state. At least we did 4 years ago than Republicans, but we don't win elections. So what's happening? What's going on? Is it voting? Is it candidates? It's hard to say. But that's where we're at right now. That's where we're at right now. We are having our annual Northshore Pride event here at the end of the month. It's the 30th of
So,
May. We're
Michael,
gonna have
Michael,
our
Michael,
yeah.
real quick, people don't know what North Shore is.
Okay, so I live on the North Shore, and which is on the other side of Lake Pontchartrain from New Orleans. It is a relatively quiet, conservative suburban area. I also have a place in New Orleans, so I'm sort of back and forth between the two. But it's taken a lot of years for there to be LGBTQIA plus or queer um, real community here. I think at least one that's has a big footprint. And so in the last few years, they've developed this thing called Queer North Shore, where they are now having a Pride event this year. Their theme is coming together. It's focused. They in the past, some of the things that they did were somewhat divisive. So I think this year, with the theme of Pride, they're trying to welcome everyone in the LGBTQIA plus community. At least that's what I've gotten from them. And so that's going on at the end of the month, which has been a big deal, right, for this area, which is one of the most conservative areas in the state. So that's fun. I mean, I'm going to be participating in that. And yeah, I just finished, was a reader at the Saints and Sinners literary event in New Orleans. So every year, there's an LGBTQIA plus literary event that's an official part of the Tennessee Williams literary event. And they put together an anthology of different queer writers. I was picked as a finalist to be in that anthology. So I got to go to that event, got to read part of one of my stories that was published in the anthology. Got to connect with a lot of different writers from our community. So it was fun. It was a fun event. So that's what's been going on for me in Louisiana. I'm also in the middle of finishing up a semester teaching. So right now I'm grading lots of papers and doing all that fun stuff.
What's it been like, educating, in the state? I have been an educator too in Louisiana, but back, it was a little bit different. Obama was president, so we were getting people educated and effective. But now that seems, now it's like take mental freedom away, obviously, and try to manipulate education so that we are in the dark and that we don't know things. You are a teacher I'm sorry, tell them Southern.
Yes, it's okay. I am a full-time teacher at Southeastern Louisiana University, and then every couple of semesters I teach at Southern University online. I used to be full-time there. Basically teach composition, which is teaching things like critical thinking, critical reading, how to make good arguments, how to understand logical fallacies, basic essay writing. And then sometimes I teach other classes. So I'll sometimes teach a creative writing course, or I'll teach Introduction to African American Literatures, a course that I've taught pretty regularly at Southern. But I'll say this, the students are and always have been very diverse in their thought. And, have never tried to steer my students thinking in one direction or another. That's not my job, right? My job is to teach them critical thinking skills, critical reading skills, and help them develop their own ideas. And so that's what I do. And I will say the students' thoughts and ideas remain, I think, as diverse as they've ever been. I don't see that the sort of overall, I guess, any kind of political climate that we have, either locally or nationally, has changed that. And so, I guess that's what I would say as far as that. I haven't seen a change there. And so, you're always going to have students from all sorts of the spectrum as far as political views go. For the most part, younger people tend to be a little more liberal. My students tend to be, teenagers because they're often just starting college, and so they tend to be more liberal as a group, and that hasn't changed. That hasn't changed.
So, what are your response for your students when in your African American literature classes? Like how do your students respond to you? Obviously, being a white man.
Yeah, no, when I was on campus teaching full time at Southern, and I would walk in, and oftentimes 100% of my students would be Black, either African American or Afro Latino or African. We had a lot of people who from Africa who attended school there. Um, there would be shock sometimes that I was the person who was going to be teaching the class. I can say I know that there have been students who did drop the class because I was the person teaching it, but I understood that. Um, but almost every semester, by the middle of the semester, the students were understood why I was teaching the class because I'm very passionate about African American literature and how it is an integral part of American literature. American literature doesn't exist without it. And, a question I would get often is, how did you learn all this? And I'm like, well, I went to school and took a class like this, and then I took another class like this in graduate school. And it's just something that I've learned because it's something that I enjoyed. And I think that, that's the reality, right, of being a white man walking into what is, or was, because I don't teach there really full time or in person anymore. That was a space for Black students. I mean, it was an HBCU, a historically Black college university that you have to go into that with some understanding of racial identity, who you are, what you're walking into. So, but overall, I think the students responded well, especially by the end of the semester.
I just find that I've gotten to teach American literature. I taught at the college level. I minored in early American literature. So American literature definitely fundamentally helps me understand where we are today. It's unfortunate that we don't have our entire country on the same page in terms of what history is and what American history is, which includes African American history. But like I'm a Frederick Douglass guy all day, every day. And I just think, especially, for our, Black community, knowing someone like that and the importance of mental freedom that he preaches, which is for all of us, that, getting away from slavery. And there's just so many things that have happened in the past in American history that just really shine a light on what's happening today. And the fact that we are repeating things, I just made a post the other day. I just paid 416 for gas. Okay, that's the highest I've ever paid for gas. The last time I paid that much for gas, it was 2007. George W. Bush was president, and we were in the Iraq War for a lie that there were mass weapons of destruction. Here we are today in a similar position. And the fact that people forget. So, do you find that your students are very forgetful of American history?
Oh, I mean, we live with students right now that have grown up with the internet and grown up with TikTok and grown up with Instagram. And a lot of their knowledge doesn't come from school. It comes from sound bites that they get here and there. So,
Do you think it's misinformation? Do you think that
I
they
don't
are
know if
bearing
it's
misinformation?
I don't know if it's misinformation. I wouldn't really say that. I guess what I would say is you don't have students that seem as interested in history. They seem more interested in other things. So I,
Culture.
yeah, I mean, and so, but then of course you do have students who are interested in history. And so again, when I'm teaching a history, a literature course, which is basically a history of literature course, you often will have students who are more interested in history in that particular class. So say I'm teaching a general composition course, my nursing students aren't necessarily that interested in American history. Some will be, but not all will. Like they're concerned with learning what they need to learn to get the degree that they need to get to go forward, right? That is oftentimes the case with students. So, I wouldn't be a good judge of that. I wouldn't be a good judge to tell you exactly where students in general are as far as their knowledge of history. I will say that for me, the way I learn history best is through literature and biography. So I can't read a history text and not fall asleep. I can't do it. But I can read autobiography or a biography and remember everything from it and be invested in learn history that way. So for me, that's part of the reason why I guess I like literature so much. I can tell you anything you want to know about Theodore Roosevelt because of the biography Theodore Rex, which I loved, right? And so, and I can tell you, a lot about different people that I've read about because their writing is either autobiographical or semi-autobiographical. Frederick Douglass, right? He wrote several, autobiographies as he aged, so you could see not only his life as it changed, but how he viewed his life changing. And so, so I'll say that, right? For me, that's how I access history anyhow. And so when I'm teaching that, the students seem, I think, to like it. But of course, I'm teaching that kind of course. Like when I'm teaching creative writing, most of the students they're interested in writing. Whereas if I'm just teaching a general studies composition course, most of the students there aren't interested in it. So does that make sense what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, when I taught competition or composition, I told my students, teach me how to teach you. I said, let me meet you halfway. If you're the comic book kid, go read the comic books critically and analyze them. Tell me what you find out.
Right.
Truth be told, I learned everything about American history through horror movies. I
Right.
majored in film studies And this was a hard fight for me in academics because you can study the monsters in horror films to figure out what the cultural fears of that time are. That's how I learned all of my modern presidents.
Jeffrey Jerome Cohen and his monster theory, the seven thesis, is the
Yes,
basis of that. I actually teach, I use monster theory in my composition
monster
classes. So
theory.
I'm constant, like I have a whole thing about mermaids, I have a whole thing about vampires. Mermaids are perfect, right? Right now you can use mermaids to talk about obviously race because of the latest Little Mermaid movie and all of the racism that came up, bubbled up around that. You can use it to talk about sexuality, right? Because originally it was written as a sort of a parable about a gay man being in love with someone, but he couldn't write that at the time. So he wrote his story as this myth. You can talk about it about create disabilities studies, right? Because mermaids can't walk, right? But we don't think of them as disabled, right? And so that you can talk about how you position someone as abled or not abled, changes. You can use them to talk about gender, obviously, right? Because they're one of the only female gendered monsters. I can go on forever about this, Lewis. I
Oh,
didn't mean
now
so.
people watching this, like you literally can teach yourself. You really can. And so, for me, yeah, the same thing. Like, I don't know if people watching this, like African American horror has exploded since this administration's been in power. Since 2017, Black horror has really, really just so like it's its own subgenre now. And you can find a lot of African American fears and things and anxieties. It's freaking amazing. I'm gonna pivot a little bit and talk about how this influences you as a writer. So, do you feel as a writer, are you, I've read your work and I've heard your work, and you've discussed personal history, family history. I'm not quite sure if I can pinpoint something that has been influenced by history itself, being that you do focus on fiction a lot. Um, but do you find your studies as a teacher impacting how you write?
Do I? Okay, so those are two things that I don't write in one way, right? I write in multiple ways. So I write a lot of opinion pieces. I do write really bad poetry that I don't like people to see. I write
Really?
fiction.
No, I don't agree with it. You don't write it much, but it's not bad poetry.
Okay, I write fiction, and then I
That's
also write.
crazy to me that that's hard for you, though.
Well,
That's so. It's just creative writers. We're all different, but it's crazy to me that because some people look at poetry like, oh, it's just a couple of lines, but no, like some people spend months on a poem. You know what I'm saying?
oh,
Like
I have my 4 line poem that I've recited a couple times with Louisiana Words, which is uh I have a dog named Sorrow and a cat called Wanderlust. The dog is rather loyal. The cat I cannot trust. It took me years to get that poem exactly where I wanted it, right? And so that's part of the problem with my poetry is I'm so intent on every little thing being correct. Whereas with my fiction, I give it a little bit more room to breathe because it's bigger. It's not yes, I still will agonize over a period or a comma or a semicolon, but not to the same degree that I will with poetry,
of course.
to a point where I overdo it with poetry. I think that's part of my problem. Um, I also write essays, though. I'll say this, my essays are influenced by sort of politics, but I just finished an essay and I just sent it to a friend who's reading it for me. It is comparing and contrasting creature from the Black Lagoon with the Shape of Water and talking about how that same monster is repurposed in Del Toro's film, to reflect the different anxieties. Whereas, the monster of the creature from the Black Lagoon, the fear, the societal fear that was represented was the other, right? The foreigners in the middle of the Cold War, it was American military going into this, dark place and finding this monster. Whereas The Shape of Water reverses that, and you're looking at, even though it's the same contemporary period, right? It's basically the same story being told. It's being told from our perspective, right? And so now the monster is the military man who is sexist, who is racist, who is ableist, who, right? So the military man becomes the monster, not the monster, because our fear now is that we're going to exist in a society where we don't, look at these different structures like, the institutionalized discriminations of all different sorts, right? Often predicated by white supremacy, which is what I think that movie is trying to say. And so the monster's the same, but as far as the physical monster, but what the monster means and who the monster is in the film is radically shifted to reflect the current time period. And so, yeah, that had, I mean, part of that's because the film is relatively contemporary. It came out in 2017. Part of that is because I felt like no one's discussed that enough, right? How meaningful that reflection is, especially with The Shape of Water. Like a lot of people got caught up with how ethereal the movie is and how sexy the monster was and all the other things. But I think it's very important to talk about this one thing. And I teach it in my class, and I haven't been able to find a good article about it, so I wrote one. Um, so,
So,
so yes, politics do influence my writing in that way. My or the world around me, what's going on. But I tend to lag behind. So, I still write about post-Katrina stuff. I still write about stuff that happened during COVID. What's Up, that story that's in Louisiana Words, is directly related to the trauma I was dealing with during COVID. And I actually wrote it very close to that time period. I tend to let myself get distance from something because I find that a lot of times when people write about something in the moment, they will get caught up in temporary emotions and feelings that don't let them actually get to the truth of what's underneath it that you can see better when you have more temporal distance. And so I tend to write at least 5 years in reflection. If that, that's just how I operate.
I don't write a lot of president stuff. I've gone back a lot, but I think to help the audience a little bit, when we talk about the monsters and other pre 1960, everything the monster was the other. Post 1960, we started to understand the monster. We started to analyze the monster because the humans started becoming monsters with Psycho and all that type of stuff. And so even you look at if you watch a vampire movie in 1933 and you watch vampires movies today, they're fantasized more. Like the vampire was the monster. The vampire represented so many things. But then you have things like Twilight that's come around now and redefined, and we've started to identify with the monster more. And I think that is, that's the shift in culture for people because everything was other. I mean, you go back to the 50s and you look at everything was big because of nuclear war and all that type of stuff. You got the attack of the 50-foot woman and you got the blob and you got all those things. You
Yeah,
know, there's been I wanna name some of your work. There's What's Up, there is I have a lot of favorites. The one with the mirror twin. We're gonna do all the hits here.
your
Uh
very own robot.
name them.
There's your very own robot, the Mirror Twin, The Last Day at Monterey Bay.
Last Day Monterey Bay.
There is what else? There's so many. I'm
You
terrible.
can
What's
find
up?
all of
There's
these works. You can find
what's
all these
that?
works that Michael is talking about on the Louisiana Words website. You can access Louisiana Words, louisianawords.com. If for some reason I'm having some weird issues with it, you can also just go to louisianawords.blogspot.com. You can see all the work that Michael has had on there. He's even been a featured writer on there. He has a lot of great pieces that are all unique in different ways. He's also a queer writer, so it's really cool. Because I think that I don't think that heterosexuals with quotations, because I'm a Kinsey person. I think we're all fluid. But I don't think that they think that we can write straight characters. Like I'm actually just got a movie role and I'm playing straight characters. So like I don't think that people understand that, right? Because do you have a hard time writing women?
No.
There women
No.
are I don't women are not my expertise in terms of psychology. So I don't jump. I feminine. Okay, so I call my writing style. I mean, would you say I'm magical realism to an extent? Like it's more like taking real life and then merging it and blurring it with things and stuff. Obviously, my poetry is a lot more serious and direct. I don't think I've written too many like creative. They're usually like very like American literature style oratory type of things. So I don't know. We all have our different inspirations and things like that, but you are very comfortable with fiction. I love short stories and I have them. And I just find that I want to get so invested. It's been a minute, but like I really enjoy the short story format the most.
Yeah.
I really do. And I know that's hard to find. And I find that I can then take, even though, screenwriting should be my primary focus, I can take a short story and make a screenplay out of it. Sometimes I'll write the short story first and then I'll do the screenplay. But this is where I am. Okay, so we're a little bit back. So I do poetry because I don't feel like I have to be polished.
Okay. See,
Right,
okay. Yeah.
but when
I'm
I
just the
yeah, I
opposite.
know.
Just the
So
opposite.
my poetry is rugged. I'll straight up call it rugged, because I'm a gender bender. That's where my talent comes in the gender moving around.
Right.
I show femininity as empowerment a lot of times, and that being the creativity and things like that. So, but when I do a short story, I find that I'm more obsessed, more like every line has to be perfect, but I'm not like that with poetry. I'll write a poem in 20 minutes and it is what it is. And I've done that. I have done that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but again, I got my MFA, right, and was in all these classes. I was in a playwriting class. It wasn't screenwriting, but I did do screenwriting in my undergrad. I did, poetry. I did short fiction. And there's just some people who gravitate to one or the other or two and not the other. And it's just a thing. Like, I don't know. I can't ever put a reason why some people go to this or go to that. Some people hate things like horror or science fiction. They want everything to be like super realist. Some people want everything to be science fiction or magical realism or fantasy, right? And so I don't know. I just think some of us, it's just what hits you. It's just what you pull to, And I don't know.
So everyone,
I don't know why.
I pulled up Michael's stats on Louisiana Words, and I can tell you pretty much, and we'll go over. He has a lot of views. But yes, your very own robot, Last Monterey Bay, all these things are like 500 reviews and more. The Mirror Twin, Visit with the Psychologist is actually one of my low key favorites. That
Yes. So
one's
that one,
good.
and that is about
A Visit with the Psychologist has a great twist.
yeah. I won't tell you what the story's about.
The title. Then we have a meeting with the Presidio Library Women's Book Club. I think that's an acquired taste.
Yeah, well, it's that thing where some people don't like it because I'm just telling this one short meeting, this one story,
And
but
it's
I'm
all about
telling it
women.
but it's three different perspectives, right? And so for me the challenge was these are three women in a women's book club, but I have to make them different enough so that when you read their three stories, it's three different stories, even though the same things are going on. And so, and I think I did a pretty good job with it. And so, when
I think you're a great writer. I think
I'll just say this. You asked a question earlier about writing women, and when I was in grad school, one of the comments I got a couple of times in workshops was, "You really can write women. Guys can't do that."
it's a
And
talent.
and I thought about it, and I think it's just because I don't write people around their gender. I do make that part of who they are, and I do make their physical bodies sometimes part of who they are, right? Because oftentimes it will have to be because of something they might be dealing with. But innately, I write people for who they are beyond those things, like even at more of a core, right? And I think that there's certain things that people share, that a lot of times will put up differences through things like these categories that really society puts onto us, right? Things like, you know, strict race, gender, all these things that we're told we are that aren't really who we are. They might over time have, you know, impacts on us, and they will have impacts on us, but at the core they're not who we are, right? And that they're things that we learn are part of ourselves more than we're born as. And I don't know what that is. I try to go inside a person in as far as I can when I'm writing a character, right? I don't start from the outside and go in. So I don't know. That's just how I do it. That's just how I write people. And so I think I can write straight men. I think I can write lesbians. I think I can write bisexual, asexual, disengendered, gender nonconforming. I think I could write anyone because I'm starting from more of an essence, I feel, of their personality, a spark deeper in them when I'm trying to access them. Um, I don't know. That's just how I operate when I write people.
I think, I do have a tendency to make my female characters a little bit more masculine in thought. But I wrote a story called Cox, which was supposed to be the opposite of Hooters. And it is about a bunch of just disgusting women that come in and they're like the men are the hosts and are the workers, and they're just constantly overstepping their boundaries and what they say, just like men would do, if it were a woman. So I find myself in that position a lot. I don't know. I'm gonna have to think about this and fit on that a little bit. Well, we are getting towards the end, but I want to take a little bit of time to talk about, what me and Michael do when we have a little bit of extra time. So me and Michael have been doing Louisiana Words now since 2022, and we've had ups and downs with it. We've had a lot of people come through. We've lost some people along the way. Jorge got rest his soul. We've had the opportunity of giving people a platform, and we've met some incredible people, and we've seen some magical things happen at these shows, regardless of what the attendance was like or who was in that. And this is something that we just have kept going. We were a little bit more, I don't use the word aggressive, but we were doing these like 3 times a year. Um, and then last year we decided on doing the Louisiana Words Tour. And I was like, you know what, with our time and everything, let's just make this the annual thing that we do just for now. So it's a one and done, and we get access, and it's something for people to look forward to. So last year we did Lafayette, Baton Rouge, and New Orleans. New Orleans, one of the reasons I wanted to redo this is because the timing was a little bad with New Orleans, and I got food poisoning, so that was a really sucky experience. But Baton Rouge went so well, and I think that's what really kind of inspired us to be like, okay, because it was our first Baton Rouge show, and the reception was magical. We had fantastic readers, and they're all ready to do it again. So we are announcing that we will be bringing the Louisiana Words Tour back for 2026. We will be having a tour over 4th of July weekend. I know, an interesting time, but we're gonna have fun and celebrate independence. Why not? Isn't that crazy that we're gonna be doing this on the 250 celebration of the country? I say, what that's rebel right there. That's rebellion. We're doing this, all right. So anywho, we will be the tour will be starting from it will be July 3rd through July 5th, Friday July 3rd to Sunday July 5th. We will be in Lafayette July 3rd at 4:30 p.m. at the oh my goodness. CH Books. I will put all that info there. I forgot where we were. But I think it's Charterhouse Books. But anyways, we're going to be in Lafayette. You'll get all the details when you follow the Louisiana Words stuff that we do here over, because I'm going to tag that in there. We will be at George's Place in Baton Rouge on Independence Day, July 4th at 3 p.m., which is a Saturday. I'm looking at that to be a pretty big show because a lot of people are going to be out already. people at the bar. And then Sunday, we will have our show at 5 p.m. at the Always Lounge in Cabaret, where we have been having our shows now for pretty much since, yeah,
Three and
we've
a
been
half
Always
years.
Lounge, except for
I mean,
that.
we had one at another place, right? And
That's it.
then every other one's been it. Yeah,
Yeah, so that's been pretty much, and we are so grateful, for Azalea and everyone that continues to let us do
yes,
this. You will see me and Michael. We are going to start putting out our casting call next week for people that want to come out and read. I think the timing's great. It's more of a daytime thing, because a lot of people are usually wanting to do other things at night and go to a poetry or fiction reading, to be honest with you. This is what we've learned from doing these things, and sometimes timing, and we learned our lessons on that. But I think the time frame is something to dip out. The Lafayette time is going to be interesting on how we work that out. But we're going to be reaching out to just local bookstores, book groups, let them know we're doing this, working on that. We're going to focus on casting all through June. I'm sorry, May. And we will start heavily promoting in June. So be looking out for that. We are always looking for writers on the Louisiana Words platform. To be a writer, you do all you have to do have either been lived or live in Louisiana. So if you resided in Louisiana at any point and you were in a city, you can submit your writing to be a part of this journey with us. Michael is originally from Baton Rouge. I'm from Monroe. When we post our writings, even though we live in different places, we tend to just say that's where we're from
right.
and that's how we put every writer on here. So if you're in Seattle and you used to live in Scott, Louisiana, then you can submit writing and represent Scott, Louisiana. That's pretty much how it works. But we're going to just say we're just encourage you go over, learn about Louisiana words. We're going to do a special interview on the Louisiana page when we get closer. We want to just make you aware of this. This is something that we're doing. It is now. We are Louisiana Words LLC, so we're really trying to figure out that. We're looking for people to help us build this into a great nonprofit that helps people in the state of Louisiana that have or have lived in Louisiana feel like their voices are heard, especially in this climate. We are for LGBTQI plus and allies. If you're an ally, hey, we'll love to have you as well. Michael is the host of Louisiana Words Live. Normally, I tend to handle the Lafayette shows, but Michael is the host. So he's the one that takes charge of the shows. I'll be there in production. Michael's done shows by himself. So I'm very grateful for him. So we're going to keep picking at this. I really do believe in what we're doing, and it's necessary work, and people see that. But we're gonna really be hitting hard for this one. We got enough time to make some big moves. But if you want to be a part of this, reach out to me, or you can reach out to Michael. His name on Instagram is going to be here. If you want to click, you have questions. If you're in the area, Michael is in Louisiana, so he's a great resource for all things Louisiana, especially for the literary world. So if you're wanting to find out something, Michael's a good person to be in contact with. Michael, you want to say anything?
One thing I would say is I know for some people it's, you know, daunting or challenging to sign up and be a featured writer, right? Maybe you don't feel like you're a writer yet, or you're shy. Oh, I understand that, but we do also have open mics, right? So if you bring your work with you, a lot of times people will get there. They won't be a featured writer, but they'll have brought their writing with us. We'll tell them about the open mics, and then they'll see, oh, how supportive and how, wonderful and warm the situation is. And then they'll be able to get up and they'll read.
He'll
And
come back.
I would say two-thirds of our regular readers, at least, have come from people who started an open mic. So if you, I mean, I encourage you to sign up as a featured writer. But if you're not ready for that, come and be ready to maybe do an open mic, and then you're not committed, you don't have to, but give yourself that opportunity, because I've seen so many people come and take advantage of that opportunity and really blossom as writers because they finally had a place to express their voices, and they realized, oh, you know what, I can do this. I this is something I like. So that's all. That's what I would add, Lewis.
I would encourage you guys to go over to my YouTube channel, which is the matches my. It's the same thing as my Instagram at LTJ is here. You can actually see the Louisiana shows that we've done, and I am currently posting 2025. So I'm gonna keep doing that, to show people. So we still have some pieces and stuff. There's some posted now, but there's going to be more coming until we get to the extra show. But that, yeah, like I said, just keep looking for me and Michael. We'll let you know when it's time. But you'll see us starting to promote this. This will be a collab post with Louisiana Words. So yeah, that's it. Well, that's about it. There's something, Michael, that I usually have my guests do on the show.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you this question, but what do you think something that we're not shedding enough light on in our community?
Oh, what do I think there's something we're not shedding enough light on in our community? I don't think you can shed enough light on the difficulty that trans people are dealing with right now. I know there is a light being shed on it, but when you look at all of the different things that have been happening to people in the trans community, whether it's having, just their passports have to reflect, their, sex assigned at birth, or not being able to feel like they're comfortable even being out in public because of what can happen to them if they go into the restroom that it doesn't look like they're supposed to be in, no matter which that is. Just the types of just small things like that, as well as just the different, like, types of medical discrimination and things that have really been going on. Um, I think it's terrible, and I think that is something that we all need to remember and we all need to focus on, that, you know, that part of our community, has taken the brunt of a lot of the laws that have gone through. And that type of discrimination only grows, right, once it starts. So if you don't want to do it for other people, be selfish and know that it will eventually get to you. But more importantly, those people matter. The people that are dealing with that are dealing with a lot, and even just on a personal level, to be understanding of the trans people in your lives and what they're dealing with is important. And I don't think that can be said enough.
I think that's perfect and fits right in with what's important. So, yeah. Well, Michael, thank you for coming back. I'm sure I'll bring you back again
All
anytime you
right.
want, really, honestly. I mean, you get that privilege. All right. Well, Michael, I guess it's time for you to close the show. You ready?
Okay. Well, y'all, if you're not throwing light, you're not acting right.
There we go with that
All
beautiful.
right.
All right, y'all. This has been another episode of Throwing Light. It's nice to change it up a little bit. Stay tuned. Please follow me and Michael as we continue to push literacy in the state of Louisiana and around the world. All right, y'all. This has been another episode of Throwing Light, and we're out.